Simon Cleave, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm actually slightly surprised that you have time to speak with me or do anything today,
Mm.
considering your incredible workload. 36 books in what, 5.5 years, is it now?
Yeah, I'd say six, but
Yeah.
splitting hairs.
How many hours a day do you spend not just writing, but marketing, running a business, uh, all the contacts that you must need to speak with, just doing this job? It's incredible.
Not as many as you think. I think I only write probably 5 hours a day maximum. So, and then the rest of the time, I spend. I've got. I think is that these days I now have a PA and I have consultant and I have an advertising person. So most of the stuff that I started by doing 5 years ago, I've now found freelancers that I can just go, right, can you go and do that for me? Because yeah, at first it was 12 hours a day, but now it's not, which is nice. So I can just I can pretty much concentrate on writing. Um, but I think I mean, sort of people ask me how I write so fast, but I think it's working in TV is the when you write on. I used to write scripts for shows like The Bill, EastEnders, Holby, and Silent Witness, and the pace at which you write is phenomenal, and then the pace at which you rewrite, because you're kind of like, well, we're filming tomorrow and you have to write this episode and you have to change this, and it's kind of unforgiving. So I think I just took that speed of writing into writing books, and I thought that was normal. I've been told since it's not.
But there is a big difference between writing, with great respect to screenwriting and books. They're similar platforms, but they're also quite different platforms as well. You've got to go inside the mind in a book,
Oh
don't
yeah,
you? In a way that screenwriting, you show it, don't you, in different
yes.
ways. A 75,000, 80,000, 90,000 word book um, is a lot to write, isn't it? And how did you find that transition between writing for television, writing drama for television, and writing books? What were the easiest things, and what were the toughest things?
I suppose the easiest things were that I was very used to writing structure. So I was kind of like I spent a lot of time because I used to work in way back in a long time ago. I worked in script development as a script editor and development. So I've been around scripts and stories and structure for a long, long time. So I was very good at structure, writing scenes, writing dialogue, um, and kind of getting a sort of instinctive feel for pace, I suppose. But what I didn't realize when I employed my first editor is that the first draft of the Snowdonia Killings, which is my first book, was a long, long way, like head hopping. I hadn't made the kind of realization that when you write a screenplay, the POV is the camera. So you write everything from the POV of the camera and therefore the audience. Um, and so yeah, it was a mess. But I had a really, really good editor, Rebecca Miller, and she kind of walked me through, yeah, you can't do that. And why have you done that? Um, and so she kind of taught me over the first two drafts of that how to take the stuff that I was good at and then add the stuff that I needed kind of to think about a bit more clearly about POVs, which was like the thing that I kept getting wrong. So we got there eventually.
When you're talking about POVs, would you have a chapter with Ruth Hunter, for example, talking, or Nick? Were you flitting between characters? Is that what you're meaning?
No, within chapters. So I think more about kind of jumping head hopping, as in jumping between a character like Ruth talking and then talking about how someone else feels, and she'd say, "We don't know that because we're in Ruth's head and that's her POV." So it was trying to make sure that the POVs were very, very clear. And I think it's absolutely fine to switch POVs between characters within a book and chapters. It's not within, so it's okay to have a new chapter from the POV of a different character. Um, but yeah, it was just trying to make sure all that was lined up properly, really.
And going back to your TV writing, what did you enjoy most about TV writing, and you wrote crime as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
What did you enjoy most about that, and at what point did you think, actually, I've had enough of this, I don't want to do this anymore?
Um, I think when I first started, I sort of like, I was kind of a bit, yeah, I wrote on doctors, but that was my first gig. And that was lovely because it was a kind of sort of daytime show. And I did love the bill. I did write 40 episodes of the bill. So that was like my big thing. But and what do I enjoy about it? I don't know. It was I kind of got something like the bill. I'd go down and I'd go on set and I'd meet actors and stuff, and I'd be like completely starstruck because it was my favorite show. So all that stuff was great. And when you do, and when you first see stuff going out on TV and you see your name come up at the beginning, and then you watch your show go out, you sort of go, "Wow, this is amazing." And so, yeah, it was a nice thing, but it's also quite unforgiving. I think the thing I didn't like about it, and I don't know whether it seemed to get worse for me, especially on places like Holby, um, is that you are very quite low down the pecking order as a writer on a TV series. And so I'd write a script, and then my script editor would rewrite bits and not run them past me because that's TV and they don't need to. And then the director would rewrite bits, and the producer, and then and then the actors would get hold of it and go, "Oh, I know, got a much better line than that." And so I watched episodes going out, going, "Hang on a second, this bears very little resemblance to my script." And whether it was me being arrogant or not, I'd be going, "I'm sure the script I wrote was better." And that scene was they've ruined that scene, and I found that really difficult. That lack of creative control, and people just meddling, and um, yeah, just that kind of I don't know. Publishing is very, very different. You know, if an editor comes in and says, "We'd like to change this," it's my decision whether I push back or, and most of the time they'll go with what I want, which is which is very, very different to the TV and film world.
How long were you in television for?
Oh, about 15, 16 years. Yeah.
And then was it after that you went into teaching?
Yeah.
After that, yeah. And what
Yeah.
did
So
you teach?
I sort of, I suppose whether it's burnout, but I'd had enough. And I think my wife went, because eventually I stopped watching episodes going out because I knew that they absolutely hacked them to pieces. And I'd get very angry. And then my wife went, "I don't think this is the job for you if you're not even watching your episode of Holby going out because you so upset." So I just went, "Right, enough." So we moved to North Wales from South London. And I went, "Oh, what am I going to do?" And my brother was a teacher and he loved it. So yeah, I kind of went, "Right, I'll do some teaching while I work out what I'm doing next."
And
Um,
so you were a teacher in North Wales. So you're
yeah,
obviously very South London, aren't you? I think you're born, bred, grew up,
yeah,
worked
yeah,
in
yeah.
South London.
Grandparents, great grandparents. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so you moved to North Wales, but you taught there at first. And what did you teach?
English and media. So it's kind of like, obviously it was yeah, I guess it was kind of what I was good at. You know, English was like about writing, and media was like, I mean, media studies was brilliant. I would sort of, yeah, with sixth forms, you know, I spend an afternoon watching Goodfellas and analysing it, and I'm thinking, this is not really a job, is it? So
Yeah, yes, that sounds like a very good teaching job. I know not all
yeah.
teaching is like that, but so at what point did you think, well, I'm teaching, I've got this script experience and writing experience, I'm going to do books and I'm going to do crime books and I'm going to publish them myself?
Yeah. There was a few steps to that. I was being hassled by various relatives and friends going, why have you stopped writing? You should go back to writing because I suppose, I don't know, whatever it was that was like, you know, whatever, I don't know. And I was reading at the time, I was reading a lot of crime books, both quite a lot of American crime books actually, sort of noir, um, and um, and I sort of just thought, well, if I write a book, I've got complete control over it, and I'm not sure I want to jump back into the into the murky world of TV and film, but I could just write a book and I could just use my spare time, you know, running a detention or whatever it might be, or in lunch breaks, I could just write a book. And I suppose I then, once I decided to do that, I did a bit of research. So I read Anne Cleeve's, and I was always reading, I read the Reader's books, and I sort of branched out a bit more. I read Cara Hunter and other people that I thought, Tony Parsons kind of crime books. So I just sort of read a lot, and then thought, okay, I think I can give this a go. I've no idea whether I can do it, but why not? And I suppose where we lived was like, a stone's throw from Snowdonia. So I'd sort of watched also the kind of seen all the crime series set in Scotland or Norfolk or Devon or Yorkshire. And I went, I wonder if anyone's ever set a series of books in Snowdonia. And I kind of, lucky me, I did a bit of research and realized that no one had ever set crime books against the backdrop of Snowdonia. So I kind of went, wow, okay, well, let's do that.
And you could do the whole fish out of water thing with Ruth
Yes.
Hunter that you had yourself experienced. Describe that to me, what it was like going from born, bred, lived
Yeah,
forever
it's kind
South
of like you
London
have
to
this sort of
North Wales.
weird preconceptions of I have I had weird preconceptions. I mean, I'm married, I'm married to Nicola, and she's from North Wales, so it's not like it was completely foreign to me. But moving everything up here, you have preconceptions of what small town Wales is like, and some are true and some are not. And then I suppose they have preconceptions of what someone from London's like.
Yeah. Did they call you a Cockney, even though you're not?
Yeah, Cockney, when I haven't got a Cockney accent, so
exactly.
it's hilarious.
I'm from West London. All the Bristolians called me a Cockney as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's that weird thing. But actually pleasantly surprised, because I kind of, I'd never moved back to London now. I was sort of like, this is my home, and I love being up here. But I could write about what it was like for Ruth Hunter, my main character, to move from South London to North Wales, and all the kind of stuff that goes with it, which was I guess therefore hopefully it felt authentic.
And why did you decide on crime as a genre?
That's the only thing I'd ever read, watched. I was completely obsessed with it. It's just slightly worrying for everyone else around me. But actually, I always kind of go back and think, God, even when I was a kid, the first things I ever read were the Enid Blyton Secret Seven and Famous Five books. I mean, they're mysteries. They're kind of like, they're not crime, but they are like little crime books for kids, aren't they? And I suppose ever since then, whether it was reading the books of the authors I mentioned, or watching crime series, I suppose, sort of slightly obsessed by crime. And I don't read or watch very much else.
And you've been extremely successful self-publishing. Was that did you decide I want to self-publish, or did you try traditional first?
I tried traditional first for a little bit, but it was so frustrating. Even though I had some contacts from when I worked in the TV business, it was like sort of people saying, yes, well, it's well written, but we've got something like this already, or not really for us, or whatever it might be. And sometimes it would take 6 months to get a polite no. So, and I just came across an article about Mark Dawson, and I read it and went, oh, and he was like talking about, and Louise Ross was in it, and I think J.D. Kirk was just about in it, maybe by then.
And I just incredibly successful self-published
huge.
writers.
I mean, they sell books by the truckload, and they still do. And I just went, well, I could try that. What's the worst that could happen? And so therefore I sort of embarked on a sort of journey of discovery about how to self-publish. But I mean, genuinely, with hand on heart, when I first pressed publish on Amazon, I thought, well, I know my mum and dad are going to buy a copy. I think my brother might, and then that'll be it. And I'll probably also have, 300 copies of my book in the garage getting moldy, and I'll carry on teaching. I just literally thought that's what's going to happen.
There is a science, isn't there, to self-publishing? It's an art form. It is, as he describes it, Mark Dawson, a formula, isn't it? And so what did you do to make sure that when you did hit publish, actually you were in a really good place to be able to sell books?
So just certain things, like, for example, a cover. I suppose, no offense to anyone that does self-publishing, but for me, self-publishing often means bad covers that look like they've been done on some terrible thing on the computer, badly edited, not always greatly written, and they look self-published. And as far as I'm concerned, if my book on whether it's on Amazon or whether it's on the shelf of a bookshelf of a bookshop, if it doesn't look like a Linda LaPlante or an Ian Rankin book, no one's going to even look at it. And if it looks self-published, you've got no chance. So I found a designer that had worked with lots of crime writers and had done a very good job, Stuart Bache, and he did the Snowdonia cover, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I spent money on that. I spent money on an editor who taught me to write. Did some.
You knew how to write. It's just how to write books.
Well, yeah, okay, I guess. And what else did I do? I just did some ads. I did some marketing. I built.
You must have had a big mailing list. I mean, the mailing list is vital, isn't it?
The mailing list is absolutely key. So I did an early release of 4 chapters of in the year before I released 2019. That would have been. I released 4 chapters and built a mailing list based on that, with also some ads. And so I had a couple of thousand people on my mailing list, and then I suppose, yeah, I did all the stuff that basically any of those self-publishing courses tell you to do. And I thought, well, if I do what they're telling me to do, then at least I've got a shot. So, and then pressed publish and went, and then when you do self-publishing, you can you have a kind of readout of sales. So the first sales, it was like about 150 books on the first day, and I was like, no, that can't be right, that's crazy. And then
that's amazing.
It carried on. And I had to get my wife in to have a look and say, I really think the software on this is not working. And then she was going, oh, it looks okay to me. And then we checked the digital chart, and the Snowdonia Killings was moving up the digital chart, and I'm thinking, this is really weird. And I guess that it kind of carried on from there, really.
That's incredible, isn't it? And so this was Ruth Hunter, and I think you had a couple of books backed up as well that you'd written, were yet to release at this point too. Is that right?
Yeah, I kind of toyed around with another book just in case, but then as soon as the Snowdonia Killings sort of took off, I went, oh God, I really need to finish that book quickly. And the same with the other one. So I kind of knew that, I don't know, I suppose I actually wrote the second book just because for intellectual exercise, because I actually enjoyed writing the first one. And I thought, well, if ever anything happens, it would be nice to do another one. So we managed to get the first 3 books out in 4 months. So I built a lot of traction as well then. So people were able to kind of read the first book and then go, okay, there's a second, and then the third, and I think the 4th one was about 5 months in. So there was a lot of books out quickly, which really helps.
And to people who haven't read Ruth Hunter, just describe the kind of stories they are, because they're modern crime, aren't they? They're set almost in a closed community. And just take us a bit further through the Ruth Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, then it's not. I haven't reinvented the wheel. They are police procedurals. There is a crime. It's based in sort of Snowdonia mainly, so it's sort of rural crime, but also there's quite a lot of influence from the county lines from Merseyside that come across, and that's kind of heavily influenced some of the books, and other books are nothing to do with that. And she is teamed up with a local guy called Nick, who is a DS, who's, when we first meet him, is a raging alcoholic, but then he gets,
and all kinds of things as well.
he's really off the rails, and he's very unpleasant to her. And then as the series develops, they become incredibly close and great friends, and he gets into recovery. So there's quite a lot of personal stuff. And also she has a thing where she had a partner. She's gay, and she had a partner, and she was living down in South London, and her partner got onto a train in Crystal Palace. This is about 7 years before the book starts, and she just vanished from that train, and there've been police appeals. She'd done everything in her power. Ruth had done everything in her power, but her partner is just missing, vanished. So she takes that kind of baggage with her up to North Wales. So that's an ongoing thing where that kind of is over the first 10 books. We sort of start to unpick what happened to her. So and then there's a kind of crime. Each book is obviously a self-contained crime book, but the characters' stories go across, as in sort of great arcs of like, and now we're 21 books in. Each kind of character has had their own few books where there's something dramatic has happened, and we follow that.
And how did you decide to do that? Because there's a great divide, isn't there, between and in a previous episode we spoke with Lee Child, who says Jack Reacher stays the same. He doesn't move, like Hercule Poirot or Miss Marple. They just stay the same throughout. Whereas other writers do go for the arcs. They do want their latest book, their character to be in a completely different place to be in the first book. Why did you decide to do that?
I think it was my getting to know the character and being instinctive about where she would be. And I quite liked the fact that she'd been in the Met. She was completely done with, like, the drug gangs of Peckham and stuff. And she was just going, I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to Snowdonia for a very quiet life. And probably the worst thing I'm going to do is tractor theft. And obviously it doesn't work out like that. But she's thrown into running the CID department and being the senior investigating officer on everything, which she had no ambition to do. She was there to see out her pension, and she's thrust into it, and then she loves it. And the more she does it, the more she loves the team that she works with, and she kind of becomes sort of a maternal figure to some of them, and whatever it might be. So that felt like exciting to write about, someone whose complete sort of trajectory changes, and so therefore each book feels a bit fresh because, like, she's discovering something new. And then, as we go through, other stuff happens where she kind of addresses whether she's going to continue to be a cop and maybe she'll retire. Or so I kind of like all that stuff.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And so you've written 21, 21 Ruth Hunters, but you've also got Frank Marshall, who's a retired police officer in Wales again, and that was also self-published, wasn't it? And you've got Rachel Hart, which was for HarperCollins, or a HarperCollins imprint. Why did you decide to do some traditional writing?
I think mainly because maybe it's like ego, but HarperCollins came to my agent and said, "Would Simon like to write something for us?" And she was like, "You should probably do this," because it's not, I suppose I think that's quite rare, and it was nice. And there were various reasons of going with a traditional publisher. Financially, it's definitely not as viable as doing the sort of indie publishing model, but I got to work with some really good editors, so I think my writing improved. I had a whole team of PR and marketing people from HarperCollins that could back the books. They took me on a tour of books, and they made festivals, so they got me into places where I couldn't get, and they also got my books into places that I couldn't get my books into. So the first two books were both out in Tesco's and WH Smith's, which I can't do those deals. So it was not quite a lost leader, but it was it opened a lot of doors, and it gave me a lot of stuff that I thought was really beneficial. And I enjoyed the process. So even though it was probably, I took maybe a financial hit by not writing those books within my publishing company, I thought the experience was really good, so I was happy to do it, I guess.
And is that ongoing now, or is that just finished for a bit?
I did 5 books, and it came to a natural end, so we decided that was that. So I think they'd like something else from me, but at the moment I haven't got time. So
no, you don't. And so just trying to do the maths. If you've done 36 books in about 6 years, that's 5, 6, 7-ish books a year, depending, I guess. So that's one every 2 months ish.
Yeah.
How? Just how? How?
I guess. So I do writing sprints. I don't know if anyone knows what a writing sprint is, but basically I set myself a complete. So I sit down this morning, for example, at 8:30, and I'll say, right, I'm going to write sort of 1,000 words in the next hour, and I'll put and it's completely, obviously it's a fake target, and I'll put my headphones on and play some music, sort of atmospheric music, and for the next hour I'll literally be completely focused, and I will try and hammer out 1,000 words in an hour, which is about my pace. And then I'll stop for a bit, take the dog for a walk, and then I'll do it again. And I guess if I do that 2-3 times a day, 3,000 words a day. If I try and sometimes work at the weekends. That's 20,000 words a week. That's 4 weeks to write a first draft. Then get an editor. That's another week. Do another draft. Get the proof done. That's 2 months. So it's kind of like how it works. And I'm really lucky that my first draft is very clean. So I probably think 95% of what I write in the first draft ends up in the final draft. So
And do you plot, or do you just start off with an idea and feel your way through it? I know people again are divided
yeah,
about how they do it.
I sort of plot less now, maybe because I'm more confident. But my favorite time and my favorite thing of any book or TV series or film in this genre or thrillers is the moment where we go, oh, it's the mum. And really hard to pull off a really great twist, but those great twists where you go, I didn't see that coming. And but you have to earn it, and it has to feel authentic. But when you do pull it off, I kind of think that's the best bit. And so I try and start with that. I kind of think, right, what's the big thing here? I kind of normally have an idea of what I want to write about. So each book is often mining something. So the one I'm writing about at the moment is 22. Ruth Hunter 22 is about far right terrorists, far right groups, and sort of it's an attack on an MP. So I kind of think that'll be really interesting, and I can use that as a way of exploring that territory. So therefore I know what happens at the beginning, and then and then how to make those two meet up. I kind of think, oh, I'm not so certain about that bit. So it's kind of a hybrid of plotting and pantsing, and
And
sort of
do you have twists that you think, oh, where did that come from? But you don't know it yourself
yeah,
until it happens.
yeah. I'll go, oh, I know, and then it'll literally occur to me within the that moment. And often the middle bit is a sort of exploration. I suppose the thing is when I'm writing the middle bit, I just know all I need to do is to hide the twist, because I know that's the bit where we're going for. So I make sure that everything else is like a sort of a red herring and misdirection, and sort of therefore I know where we're going, but I'm not quite sure how we're going to get there. And that's the fun bit, because it's like, and sometimes it'll take me places where I go, oh, I didn't think we're going to go down there. Um, and I suppose I've written for Ruth and Nick for so long now that actually I wouldn't quite say the books write themselves, but it's very comfortable. I kind of know everything about them. They're real people in my head, so I just write what I hear in my head, I suppose.
Yeah. You haven't got to the stage where I think Mark Billingham sort of forgot how many kids one of his main characters has. You know, it's just it's all there in your in your
It is
brain.
sometimes though, although I haven't. What I really wish I'd done, and this is like I should have done. I have no record of all the personal stuff that I've written. So I'll go, oh God, what's Ruth Hunter's brother called? And I'm thinking, oh God, is it Ian? Is it? And I'll have to try and work backwards and work out which book would I've written it in. So there is or I ring my editor and go, can you remember? So there are moments where I panic.
Yeah. Or the fans will tell you; they'll know.
Well, that's yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They know so much stuff. It's frightening sometimes.
And are you inspired? This was originally a true crime podcast. Are there true crimes that have inspired storylines or characters or criminals?
Yeah, yeah, very much so. I watch a lot of true crime, and so one of the books was about modern slavery, and I'd read an article in the newspaper about a modern slavery gang that had been working up on the North Wales coast, and they'd been bringing people in from India, and I kind of read, the more I read about that, so I wrote a whole book about the modern slavery, and then in completely different circumstances, I'd watched a true crime documentary about a guy that had manufactured a machine gun with a 3D printer in Wolverhampton, and he imported. So he found the plans for a Russian machine gun. He'd manufactured all the plastic parts and got some metal parts brought over, and then he sold it to a drug gang, and then they wanted another one, so he started manufacture. And I went, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I just went, that's a really good story, and it feels original. So I had another book where there was a guy manufacturing firearms, and
And what do you do to ensure that your procedure is, you know, it's works of fiction, isn't it? But also to try and get your procedure as correct as possible.
I have a mate who's a detective sergeant at Wrexham CID, so I'm very lucky. And In fact, we're going out this Friday for a coffee. So he read the first 4 or 5 books and was kind of like a consultant. So he'd ring me up and go, "Yeah, you know that Section 18 warrant, you can't do that." And or sometimes I'll ring him now and I'll say, "Okay, we want to do this," and he go, "Yeah, you can't do that." And I'll say, "Okay, how could we do it?" Pushing the realms of believability. So you go, "Well, you could do this, this, and this," and I was like, "Okay, we'll do that." So I try and make it as authentic as I can, but I'm also well aware that police officers spend a lot of time doing paperwork or sitting in a car for 3 days just watching a house where nothing happens. So it's a kind of balance between the two. But I try and make it. I think if someone reads it and feels like it feels authentic, then I'm happy, really.
And for you, what are the essentials of a crime novel?
I think I was talking about this the other day. I was thinking, why do people, what is it about my books or anyone's books? I think people love solving puzzles. That, whether we know from Agatha Christie that those whodunits where you're just there going, right, who is it, and you want to get there before the detective or the person you're watching it with going, I know who it is, I know who it is, it's the brother. So we love that puzzle solving, and I think that is a thing that is kind of a timeless. And then I think if you have really, really strong characters that your readers want to come back from book to book and find out what's happening in their personal lives because they love those characters. And then I think setting, because I did do 4 prequels for Ruth Hunter set in Peckham, which is not quite as pretty as Snowdonia. So,
But it's atmospheric and it has its time. And if it's prequels, it will be of an evocative time as well. You would.
but they didn't sell as well. So, and I think when I talk to readers, it's because it wasn't set in Snowdonia. So I think the Snowdonia thing is definitely a real pull. I think people love a lot of rural, those rural police procedurals that do so well, that we see sell so well. I think the combination of those 3 things: great characters, a really good mystery with a twist, and then a great setting that is places where people go on holiday or places that feel atmospheric, I think, rather than something that's sort of more city based, often works very well.
And you've mentioned a few authors along the way. Which authors, what books inspire you now?
Oh, so I'm trying to think what I've just read. I've just read a Mark Billingham. I think he's great. I read Cara Hunter's new one and Helen Field's new one. I kind of write. I mean, they're all kind of like mates, not mates, but they're people I kind of, if I bump into a festival, we'll have a drink together. So I try and read those, and then sometimes I'll jump across. I would like to read American stuff, so it's like I've read all the Michael Connelly stuff, but I'll kind of read James Elroy or all sorts of things. I think I quite like the break from British crime to American noir. Although my books aren't very like that, I quite like reading those because they sort of take me out of my comfort zone, I think.
And you've also got a couple of standalones, including one that's out this month, haven't you? Set in
I
Provence.
have.
Just tell us a bit about that, please.
So last year I wrote for Storm Publishing, who are a sort of smallish publishing house. So I wrote Last Night at Villa Lucia, which was a sort of it was a kind of classic psychological thriller, destination thriller, I think they're called, about a very wealthy, entitled family from London that go to a Gigi villa in Tuscany, and someone gets murdered, and it's about the investigation. Although what I did make sure is that the woman and the daughter that run the villa are from Wrexham, so
Okay.
there's a
There's a
sort of
connection.
nod to North Wales. And then I have 5 Days in Provence, which is out at the end of this month, which is about 5 women, all who are turning 50. They go to Provence to drink wine and hang out in a farmhouse, and they're also going to hike up a place called Mont Ventoux, which is the highest peak in Provence, and it's part of the Tour de France. And as they're going up the mountain, there are wildfires. It's the middle of the summer, it's very hot, and the mountain gets covered in smoke, and then only 4 come back. So that's out. I won't tell you what happens.
No, don't.
That's
I
the
imagine it
pitch.
doesn't end well for someone.
Yeah, so that's out as well. So they're really fun and very, very different and far more challenging to write, but I quite like that.
And and looking ahead, what do we have on the horizon? You've mentioned Ruth Hunter 22. And what
Yeah.
else? That
And
and what else?
Frank Marshall #4, and then I'm just talking to the producers. So basically, Ruth Hunter is meant to be made is going to be made into a TV series.
Incredible.
So I've got the script. They are pitching it to ITV this week, and so there's a production company in Cardiff. All three media have put money into it. It's a really, really good script. I didn't write it. Helen Rayner wrote it, who's a very good writer.
Amazing.
So that is all going on. And I'm developing another strangely enough, having said I don't want to work in TV, I'm now developing a TV series based in Wrexham about cops as well. So
Fantastic. Is that unrelated to your books? Is that a separate thing?
yeah, completely.
Wow.
There's a production company up here, and they got me in, and I really love what they're doing. And they've got great energy, and they want to kind of bring stuff to Wrexham. And so we're developing a series together about cops in Wrexham and what's going on, really, I suppose, in sort of like a Wrexham version of Blue Lights, I guess. So
Great.
So that's all going on. So a sort of a bit of all that stuff, really.
Well, so you're taking you continue with the books, but there's a bit of a 360 going on here with the scripts too. Although you're not writing the scripts, there might be. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
There might be. So yeah. So we'll see. I'm just trying to keep busy, really. But yeah, no, it's I'm very lucky. I get to do my hobby as a job, so it's not too bad.
There is no luck at all. Writing 6 books a year isn't lucky. That's not lucky. That's a huge amount of work.